12th June 2026, world's largest IPO arrives with SpaceX getting listed on the Nasdaq. Will it have any impact on you and me sitting in India? We will try to find out in today's video. SpaceX was listed on Nasdaq at $135 per share, and by the end of the day, its valuation touched $2.1 trillion, with Elon Musk becoming the world's first trillionaire. Is SpaceX really worth $2.1 trillion? Aswath Damodaran, widely known as the Dean of Valuation, analyzed SpaceX's 400-page prospectus in detail. His fair value estimate comes to approximately $1.3 trillion. Significantly below the market price. And here is another interesting detail. SpaceX reserved 30% of its IPO allocation for retail investors. That is unusually high. Some analysts are concerned about this because retail investors are generally less patient and they can introduce more volatility. In other words, market is currently running on optimism and not on fundamentals. So the real question is SpaceX an investment opportunity or just a speculation? Let us understand what SpaceX actually is. There are three major business verticals. First, launch services, using Falcon 9 and Starship rockets to launch satellites into orbit. Second is Starlink, global internet service delivered through low Earth orbit satellites. In 2025, Starlink generated $12 billion in revenue. Starlink is the engine which actually justifies the valuation of SpaceX. Starlink's satellite network and AI compute will directly challenge Amazon and Google. But this is where the actual risk lies. AI infrastructure demands enormous capital expenditure and the unit economics are not yet proven. And that is why SpaceX IPO is not just a stock listing. It is a signal of where the global economy is heading. The convergence of space, satellites, and AI. Third, and the most interesting, AI infrastructure. The prospectus of SpaceX clearly states that the company plans to enter the AI market with full force. Nasdaq has a rule called fast entry rule. It means that when a company gets listed with a market capitalization above a certain threshold, it gets added to the Nasdaq 100 index within just 15 days. The size of SpaceX IPO makes this automatic. Now consider this. ETFs and index funds that track the Nasdaq 100 index manage trillions of dollars globally. The moment SpaceX enters the index, all of these funds will be forced to buy. It does not matter how high the valuation would be, they are forced to buy. Estimates suggest that this forced buying alone will drive $150 to $200 billion of passive inflows into the stock. And that is the structural demand that could push SpaceX shares even higher, at least in the short term. But the chain does not end here. Let us move to the Indian connection. The first route, direct investment. Under RBI's liberalized remittance scheme or LRS, every Indian resident can invest up to $250,000 per year abroad. Through this route, you can buy US stocks directly using platforms like IndMoney, Grow or Winvesta. But for most Indians, the exposure will be indirect through mutual funds. Several Indian mutual funds carry US tech exposure. The Motilal Oswal Nasdaq 100 Fund of Fund, Navi US Total Stock Market Fund and other international funds. Once SpaceX enters the Nasdaq 100, these funds will automatically gain exposure. The third, competitive pressure. The satellite internet service of SpaceX, which is called Starlink, is expected to come to India very soon. This will directly impact the Indian telecom stocks like Bharti Airtel and Reliance Jio. Starlink already has over 5 million subscribers across 70 plus countries. In short, let us remember three things. First, SpaceX's $2.1 trillion valuation may not give direct access to Indian investors, but it will certainly have indirect exposure through mutual funds, FII inflows, and telecom competition. Second, there is a gap between valuation and reality. The difference between Damodaran's $1.3 trillion fair value and $2.1 trillion market value is something that every investor needs to understand. Third, whether you invest in SpaceX IPO or not, AI plus space economy is going to be the biggest wealth creation story of the next decade. What do you think? SpaceX IPO will make good money for the investors? Would love to hear your comments.